11:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in New Zealand, and it's Facebook Live. Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you again. And we have a great guest today, Dr. Rob Downey. Dr. Downey, thanks so much for being with us today.
Delighted, Dr. Tom. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. It's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure. And put in your questions into the Q&A as they come in. And I'm going to start with reading the bio for Dr. Downey just to make sure I get it right. And let me just bring that one up. And I'm there we go. Dr. Rob Downey is a board certified family medicine medical doctor and IFM certified practitioner. Now that's a 3.5-year training in itself. He's 21 years of experience as an attending physician, 15 years as a functional medicine provider, the founder of Seaworthy Functional Medicine. What town is that in, Dr. Downey?
Homer, Alaska.
Homer, Alaska. When non-Alaskans can visit once, become an Alaskan patient, and follow up from anywhere on Earth. His whole career has been spent working for and on behalf of nonprofit hospitals and Alaskan Native corporations. Many of the people Dr. Downey has the privilege of providing care for have a very high ratio of challenges to resources. This gives him a unique capacity to share a key lesson. A little goes a long way. And I think what you mean by that is that many of your patients really don't have resources to spend a lot of money on nutrition and things. Am I right on that?
Money, time, just feeling pinned by circumstance and really needing some good news. Yeah.
Well, let's get right to it. I mean, when a person comes in with a chronic inflammatory condition, which is practically everything that comes in unless it's an acute trauma, what are some of the basics that you start with in making recommendations to them?
Well, I certainly start with a discussion about the inflammation they can't feel.
Right.
And so we'll talk about silent inflammation and their mood and, maybe they've got inflammation they can feel in their joints, but we'll just go again right straight at it and say, hey, there's this whole perfect storm we're living in for inflammation. And so it's not getting talked about in the conventional setting. Maybe they've found it in other domains, but it's a big relief to them. They know something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so then when we say, well, okay, here's the good news. There's so much pro-inflammatory stuff happening. Your stress management is anti-inflammatory. Your whole food is anti-inflammatory. Then as we get you into a state of peace, that's another dimension of quenching inflammation. And then if we use supplements and testing on top of that, that lifestyle is the cornerstone and foundation of your anti-inflammatory functional medicine house, then the anti-inflammatory supplements can really make a huge difference. And of course, we're always tying gluten into that and discussions about gut barrier integrity. And so many of the times, lights just come on.
Right. So you're referring to lifestyle changes to begin with, and that people aren't aware that how they've lived their life has fueled whatever condition they finally came in with.
Yeah, it's the backstory. Yeah.
Now, you've used a word, and you and I have had the privilege of talking a few times, and this is a common word in your vocabulary, which is not a common word in the vocabulary of most practitioners, and that is finding a sense of peace. Can you elaborate on that? Because that you referenced that a minute ago, and that can slip by people really easily.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Tom. I think that what's so neat about being at this point in my career is I get a chance to reflect on 16 years of work and ask myself, well, what have I witnessed? What's most important to share? And I always remember Mark Hyman saying the most important thing was food. And that was my tenet for a long time. But so many of the people I work with I don't think they realize it because they're so tough, they're so stoic, they're so self-reliant. But I don't even think they're in a place of enough peace and clarity even to take the food step. So maybe that's just my practice.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me realize that for my group to empower them to even start to embrace whole food, I needed to find a little foothold for them where they could get some ground and be at peace. Because so many of them were somewhat frantic. Now, they wouldn't look frantic if you met them on the street, but here in the room with the patient door closed, it emerges that they just are overwhelmed. And so whether that's relaxing with their kid or walking their dog or listening to music or meditation or yoga or getting in the zone or taking a break, it varies so much from person to person. But I've really gotten to the point, for me, that's number one, is a place of peace. And then I've seen this almost transformational quality when we find what it is for them out of a state of attunement. When the lights come on and they say, that's what it is for me, then it's just really, it's such a great feeling to see them, like, see their shoulders actually during the discussion drop, see their face. And you've mentioned this when I've gotten to talk to you. It's really working well. Or the feeling of having your radiant kid with you. Oh, I think you might be muted, Dr. Tom, at least on my end. Sorry.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. I was. I got bumped off for a minute and then it came back. It's almost Gio's bedtime. And
hey,
so
Gio.
he always comes on to say hello in Facebook Lives. And yes,
I get to be with the star.
Yes. Yes. He's just pure love and happiness. And it's just a real blessing. And
Yeah.
when you talk about peace, hanging around with someone like this,
Yeah. It doesn't get any better than that.
It really helps me to see where I am not in peace. And on a daily, on a minute by minute basis, this one is always present. Always present.
Yeah. The time is now, always, when you're that age.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, he's just in love with you, Dr. Rob.
Boy, that's the good stuff, right? Let's just keep doing this.
Yeah. Everyone who's watching will get some peace just from this one, just from this.
Yeah. Which is another dimension of this. Some of this is so simple. I mean, it's incredibly powerful, but some of it is so simple. Peace isn't fancy.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you elaborate a little more about that?
Well, I just think that I think so few people I talk to have been invited to find their inner place of peace.
Yeah.
If they're indignant about something or stressed or frustrated or worked up or watching a lot of the news or whatever, or highly responsible or highly engaged, there are all these defaults that take people into a place of inner turmoil. And they'll almost assume that if they're in a place of peace, they're wimping out or they're not showing up. Right. So one of the things I encourage them to do is say, if you get into a place of peace, you're going to turn on your superpower. You're going to show up more. You're going to be more productive. You're going to have powerful intuition about what's needed next. And again, kids and time in nature are these reminders that we're surrounded by things that are just are happening that way. This optimal place of peace and attunement with one another and one's surroundings. And if we can tap that, it just makes everything so much easier.
You know, that's why we talk about forest bathing for people that live in the cities, is because it gives you an opportunity to have some quiet time within, or as you're referring to, some peace within. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It's the most powerful. I think it's time. Say bye-bye. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Night, night. Mwah. Mwah. You know, I refer to the pyramid of health, and that health is to explore health issues. Bye bye. Bye bye. To explore health issues, we have to look from four sides. You know, we have to look from the structure, the biochemistry, the emotional or spiritual, and the electromagnetic, and to identify the triggers that are fueling the inflammation. And by far, there are exceptions, but by far the most common fuel of inflammation is the emotional or spiritual, because we bury it. We put zero time into trying to find peace, in your language, which I really appreciate. Most of us spend zero time trying to do that. And as you said, we think we're weak if we're doing that. And that's actually the most powerful thing you can do, is to find that core center inside of you, right? Right. Can you give us a case study that might correlate with this?
Well, you know, I think part of it is it's like so many, Mark Hyman, et cetera. You know, it seems like 90% plus of functional medicine practitioners got into functional medicine because of their own issues. And so I was not at peace. I mean, that's the one that really jumps to mind. And I came out of the West, I came out of Montana and Stoicism. And I had a combative and somewhat superior approach underlain by insecurity. And I thought I was a pretty peaceful person. And when I really took a look in there, there was a lot of turmoil. What's your phrase? Anxious, neurotic, and insecure.
Being fine. Being
Right,
fine
right.
means right. Freaking insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Yes.
Yeah. And so for me, my drive has been to serve. And I know that that's one of your key things. And so in terms of showing up for my patients, my family, showing up for functional medicine, being able to have the confidence to do all of this, I just really found that meditation and yoga and having goodwill toward those I have adversity with, and welcoming all the parts of myself, this Thich Nhat Hanh practice of any part of the self, just saying, hello, my precious so-and-so, I'm there for you. It felt almost saccharine sweet initially. And then now I feel like, oh my gosh, what a contrast that there's a real reservoir of peace and goodwill in there. And previously there was a lot of insecurity and turmoil. And so I just feel like it's almost an aspect of every patient I work with, because probably people that aren't interested in it aren't coming back for follow-up visits. I mean, maybe that's an overly general answer, but I think the people that gravitate to my practice are ready to have very real conversations about showing up for themselves and showing up for others and being compassionate with themselves.
Oh, I think we might have lost Dr. Tom. So I'm going to just pose a question to you from our audience,
Gotcha.
Dr. Downey. Oh, there he comes back.
Oh, there we go.
It's Costa Rica.
Tech world. We all live in tech world now.
Yes. What you were saying was extremely beautiful, really beautiful. And it's the most difficult work for most of us to do, is the inner work. We don't want to go there. We think that it represents a weakness in us that we have inner work to do. But when we look from a observing point of view of the society that we grow up in and the pressures that we have on a daily basis and the types of shows that we grow up watching and the messages in those shows that imprint in our brain, it's completely understandable why we hide from really going inside, because there's so much turmoil in there for most of us.
Mhm.
And a large percentage of the very difficult patients that I see
I think we might have lost him again, Dr. Downey. So
Yeah, no problem.
let's just go to a question.
Sure.
Question from Jill on Facebook. I am having a very hard time gaining weight. How do I know if I'm getting enough calories? How many calories is enough? My gastroenterologist has ruled out anything serious. I'm 5'4" and weigh 93 pounds. I currently eat a very healthy diet and live a very healthy lifestyle. Otherwise, no health issues, no thyroid issues. Just can't gain weight. What do you think?
Well, a lot. So up around 1,800 calories plus, that's capital CAL calories, is sort of ballpark fuel needs. When I hear that, my first blush response is absorption. When somebody's trying to get the calories in and they're not gaining weight, I worry that stress distress pathways or gut barrier slash gut assimilation, the ability to assimilate nutrients, running the software to the gut, the rest and digest software, again, things like stress management and Oura ring, positive attitude, enough sleep, or something's going on that needs to happen to get those macronutrients and micronutrients from the gut lumen into the system. That's usually where I start with something like that. But 1,800 calories a day is sort of a good place to start from.
All right, thanks. I'm going to help Dr. Tom get back on live in a minute, but would you tell our audience a little bit about your upcoming event, Healing Habits, and what they can expect from that?
You bet. Thank you. So I'm so fortunate to get to be a co-host of the Healing Habits Summit via Health Means. And it's along with a brilliant co-host, Heather Aardema, the founder of the School of Living Lighter, a multiply certified health coach. So the two of us get to talk to over 40 thought leaders about habits. Why do we form habits successfully or not? And there's so many diverse answers and so many profound dimensions to this that are so interesting, some of which are really granular and interesting, just the recipe ingredients for successful healing habits, and some of which are not intuitive and wonderful surprises. So that drops around the end of March, and I believe the links are accompanying this live session. And Dr. Tom is one of our leadoff hitters, no surprise. So he sets the stage for this wonderful journey that folks get to take. And I got to have a front row seat. I've said to my friends, it's like I got to be at 20 plus live performances of my favorite musicians and ask for my favorite songs. Like how good does it get to, just incredible, just a wonderful thing to get to share. And I feel so privileged to have gotten to try to be a steward of that whole process and to try to create a sacred space for each person to share their message.
I think that this is an incredibly impactful event for people, and I recommend everyone, the link is posted here, please register. And if you listen to 1 out of 20, it may be the one that changes the direction of your life for that area that we don't have. Most of us don't have a really good skill set of dealing with. You know, if we're dealing with food sensitivities and recipes, okay, you know, we all can do that. But when we're dealing with old emotional baggage that we don't know we're carrying around on our shoulders, and we just don't know. And when we listen to one of the guest speakers in this event, and all of a sudden they go, oh, wow. And you just start realizing, wow, when I was 5, ... Wow. Look at the decisions I made from that in my life. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're looking for out of this event for attendees is to have.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And it feels sensible and compassionate to do it because you hear from these experts. The good news is the other side of this, when we think of how when we show up for a friend or our child or our spouse or a community member, when we show up for them, that light in their eyes, when we do that for ourselves, the other side of this is literally beautiful. Those inner parts then aren't sort of making a ruckus or creating toxic conditions. And one of my favorites is from Cory Muscara. His phrase is, to any part of the self that manifests into our consciousness, his phrase is, you're welcome here.
Ah, nice.
I just love that.
Yeah. Yeah. If we think about that, what part of any of us here tonight, what part of yourself do you not welcome? And that exercise all in itself, well, I don't like it that I do ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, I don't like it that when my partner does this, I do that. Or, you know, and just recognizing that. And what happens if somebody welcomes that part of themselves?
Yeah.
Seems to me it takes a lot of the angst away. It like pops a hole in the balloon, keeping you from getting inside to find your own peace. Is that you pop the balloon?
Yeah. I think it's really striking, and a bunch of us have been discouraged from it again, that it's wimpy or it's backwards, and I think it's scary. I think if it's felt more convenient to be the judge, say, hey, you got to get in line, you know, quit your yapping, quit your whining, then it can feel like some apologies are necessary. Mark David, person I just, again, interviewing both him and you, I just felt like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And he said, we have brilliant reasons for the things that we do.
That's right. Isn't that true? And it's great. And it's great when we can laugh about it and laugh about ourselves and the silly rationales that we use for the things that we do. You know, if you can laugh about it, it doesn't have that much power over you anymore.
Right. Oh yeah. I've been doing tapping, you know, which again, I had, like, Mark Hyman probably has had the most influence on me over the last 15 or 20 years in total. And so I was doing some tapping, which I had only embraced in the last 6 months. And these things that I would acknowledge in myself, again, were really, really wildly insecure relative to the amount of whatever was happening. And I would just tap my way through it. And then I could feel those parts of myself. This can sound kind of mystical, but this is, again, what I witness in my patients. Just when there's that self-compassion, I could just feel this ease, like those parts of the self said, you know, this is all so much better when you're not beating up on us, right?
Right.
But also, we're not obligated to make the insecure 12-year-old the CEO.
Right.
I mean, it's not like honoring the self means we're going to promote everybody to executive leadership. Everybody kind of, I think, it drifts to their angle of repose.
Yeah.
It's almost like the parts of the self auto orchestrate into this biologic organization, which is really powerful and almost magical to witness. How people then, they just navigate so much more cleanly from that juncture onward. It's often a watershed moment
Kim said, I think when you realize what stress does to your health, you have to find peace. It forced me to make changes. So what Kim is suggesting is that when she realized the impact of not being at peace, and then she felt the motivation to go out and do it. And that's what I think your event has a strong potential to do for the vast majority of people, is help them realize where are the emergency brakes that are holding us back.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Kim. We've got a question from Melissa. What would cause someone to be unable to lose weight despite exercise and diet? Thyroid is sluggish, but would that cause that much of a difference in ability to lose weight?
So I always want folks to tune up their thyroid. Different functional medicine docs do different panels. I do a 6-part panel: TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies. But I usually find when the thyroid's tuned up and the person says that magnitude of what they just said, that character, their question, there's usually some elevated cortisol due to stress distress and some insulin resistance. And some need for some stress management, some meditation, some adrenal testing, maybe a little time restricted eating, getting enough sleep. And I often find people love to have labs like a Genova adrenal cortex or a Dutch Plus and actually go, oh, there's my elevated cortisol, and the insulin's running with it. And oh, what's insulin resistance? Most folks who struggle with weight, my greatest blessing I'm able to offer them is to say that insulin's a fat storage hormone, and you're going to be happier when it's optimal. It's silently signaling to hang on to the fat. And
so what people don't understand usually about the language that we comfortably use in functional medicine, the insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. What does that mean? Well, insulin's job is to escort sugar into the cell. And your blood sugar is called your blood glucose, and insulin is the escort. But what happens for many reasons over the years is that your escort falls down on the job and your insulin doesn't work so well anymore. So your sugar doesn't get inside the cell. So you crave more sugar because your cells say, I need sugar, I need energy, I need glucose. And your brain says, I need glucose. It's the number one fuel for the brain. And the insulin, and the glucose is in the bloodstream, but the insulin's not escorting it into the cell. You've got insulin resistance. And that's what insulin resistance means, is that the sugar is not being escorted into the cell. And what you want to develop is insulin sensitivity, so that your cells are more sensitive to insulin, so that it works better. Less insulin, more benefit. That's the goal. Yeah. And how your emotions play a part in that, we just went through pretty quickly, but it's the stress hormone. You know, stress hormones are really good for you. They save our lives, and we really need them. Excess stress hormones are the problem. So it's not stress hormones. It's excess amounts of stress hormone. So let's not make our survival mechanisms the bad guy, right? And and then you ask the question, how do I lower the excess stress hormones? And we've got the link already posted to watch this event and listen to the experts who will talk about excess stress and how we react to excess stress. There's one more thing I'd like to say about that, and that is, I think I said it in our interview, the difference between a reaction and a response. That a reaction is like almost immediate, knee-jerking, save your life kind of action to something that's come at us. So I react to it. Whereas a response, something comes in, you take a look at it, and you say, oh, you know, I'd really like to respond to this way. So a reaction doesn't have self-control. A reaction is an automatic. So when when you look back at your interactions with your kids or your spouse or anyone, and you say, well, why did I do that? That's not really the way I would have wanted to respond. That means that you did a reaction. You reacted to them. You reacted to some energy as opposed to responding. And so that's the kind of thing that we talk about in this event. And I know I talked about that one there.
Yeah, there's a gap between stimulus and response, and therein lies our freedom.
There you go. Oh, that's profound. That's really good.
Not mine. Not mine. I think it was the visionary who wrote that book about meaning. I think it was Viktor Frankl.
Oh. Okay.
But sorry if I'm getting it wrong.
Well, it's a beautiful saying, and it'll work well for us. So who are some of the guests on your event? Who are some of the other guests?
Well, there's this great guy called Tom O'Brien. I'm really happy he showed up. And then Keisha Ewers, what a radiant visionary in this domain we've just been talking about. Dr. Achina Stein, psychiatrist on the East Coast with just a mind-blowing capacity to get into these layers around our mood and what our mood needs. Mark David about reforming our relationship with food. Dan Kalish, big hitter in functional medicine all the way back to the very beginning, and an ex-monastic who's just like talking to a deep wellspring of peace when you're talking with Dan, given that he does 2 hours of meditation every day from 3 to 5 in the morning, and on. Just holy cow. Really a roster of folks that, well, you get it.
That's really impressive. Yeah, that is really impressive. I'd like to listen to some of these interviews myself. I've known Dan for many years, of course, with the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I didn't know that he's a 2 hour a day meditator, but that makes a lot of sense because he's always so clear-headed when you talk to him.
Yeah.
Point on. It's marvelous.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So many. Well, I'm almost just flooding with the number of great folks, but a big diversity, some of them strictly in these areas of habits, some coaching experts, per se, behavior change experts, per se, and then some folks just coming from their domain. And almost everyone, Heather and I asked them, why do people have trouble forming healthy habits? And then what are the steps you can take? And every single speaker, we said, what's something people can do today? And so we tried to make it really inviting so that we wanted the whole thing to be welcoming and warm, create this sense of doability.
Well, that's marvelous. That's really, and when you asked me that question, my immediate response, what a thoughtful question. And if he's doing that with everyone, everybody's going to get the Cliff Note summary of the entire interview with that recommendation of where can I start today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we have no, that's okay. It's okay. We have a question here from Colin. There is a comfort in functional medicine in that it gives options. Unfortunately, I needed an operation for inguinal hernia repair in October of last year, which left me with numbness and pain in the area. Life becomes debilitating, especially when one is 72 years, because as well as the structure being compromised, the function also becomes compromised. Okay, well, no pass, Colin, no pass. I'm 70. I turned 70 last month. And so age really doesn't have that much to do with it. So your body always wants to heal. It always wants to regenerate. The regenerative process is slower as we age for most people. That's because we make less stem cells, and stem cells are the ones that stimulate new growth. And there's a tendency to not make as many. That's why one of the reasons why exercise is so important. Just basic, simple aerobic exercise like going for a walk every day, 30 minutes, 5 days a week or more, is tremendous to help stimulate new stem cells, which generates new heart cells and brain cells and kidney cells and muscle cells. So I hear you, and I'm sorry about the inguinal hernia. The post-operative effects, that might be first thing I would look at, and then we'll ask Dr. Rob. But first thing I look at is the scar from the hernia. The scar should be the same color as the skin around it. And if it's really dark color compared to the skin around it, there's a lot of blockage of energy there. There's like a fire. Or if it's really white and anemic compared to the skin around it, there's not much energy flowing through that area. And one of the things you can do for a scar is you can take an ice cube and wrap a little paper towel around it, because you're going to hold it, and so that you don't freeze your fingers. And you just rub it on the scar while you're gently bending and leaning back and leaning left and leaning right. You're moving the ice cube over the scar, twisting right, twisting left, and do that twice a day. And an ice cube will last about 4 or 5 minutes, and have a towel underneath you just to soak up the melting water. But do that twice a day for 2 weeks as a trial. And then notice how you feel in 2 weeks. And if you feel 20% better, it means it's a scar, and you have to deal with the scar, right? And there's other things you can do, but that's a nice screening technique that might help you identify if the scar is the contributing trigger for the post-operative symptoms you're having. Dr. Rob, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I flashed on a couple of things. One is that the good news, again, is what I would call plasticity, that we all have plasticity in our systems. And Dr. Bland, the father of functional medicine, said the natural state of affairs is to have a ton of vitality and plasticity in the system right up till the very end. And he cited a member of his family who was in very advanced years and playing cards with the family and at 98th percentile in all domains. And then a few weeks later, he said, I think I might be departing the planet soon. And that was it. And Dr. Bland cited that as sort of normal aging. And so anyone who tells me they're worried about brain plasticity, tissue plasticity, organ reserve, my message is always there's probably more plasticity there than you think. And when I hear about nerves and tissues, then I think about B vitamins and magnesium, so the nerves can kind of reset themselves. And I think about also just, again, this may sound like a broken record, but some of it is just this issue of what's called central sensitization, the brain letting more information in than is necessary. And that responds to peace and meditation and yoga and just a sense of restoration so that the brain can gate out some of that information it doesn't need as the area heals. So I think this will kind of declare itself in a year, but probably a pretty darn good prognosis would be my guess.
That's a really nice comprehensive answer. And you only heal when you're in a parasympathetic state, which means when you're sleeping or when you're meditating or having quiet time. That puts you into a parasympathetic state. And that's the only time we heal. We don't heal when we're in fight, flight, or fright. So sleep is really important for this condition, or for all of us, actually, to also keep in mind. Another question came in from Sue. Low glutathione, high metals. Just lost the question. Just a minute, Sue. I'll get it back here. Hard to do this on the phone sometimes. Here it is. High metals, leaky gut, given like 20 supplements, can't do all at once. Which should I concentrate on first? You're absolutely right. That's extremely difficult to do. Extremely difficult. Low glutathione, high metals, lots of different supplements to take. Good reason probably for every one of those recommendations. But Dr. Rob, how would you prioritize that?
Well, I think I'd probably, I would follow the Institute for Functional Medicine teaching that the detox pathways and the gut barrier integrity have to be intact before the metals can be cleared. So
Exactly. So focusing on the gut. And the first thing I would do, drink more water. And if you weigh, I'll give an example, 150 pounds, and you want to detox, it's a half ounce of water per pound body weight. That's 75 ounces of water a day. So that is almost 10 8-ounce glasses or 8 10-ounce glasses a day. Are you drinking that much? You have to have adequate amounts of hydration to flush this stuff out. So as you start mobilizing, just make sure that this is a habit that you're right on top of. And one of the things I always recommend when you wake up in the morning, almost all of us, first thing we do is go to the bathroom. And after that, the very next thing, go get 2 big glasses of water and drink them down. Oh, I feel so full after that. You'll feel fine in 5 minutes. Within a couple of days, you'll be looking forward to that water. And, oh, my bowel movements was great yesterday. And you'll just notice that your body starts changing. I'm going to date myself here, but it used to be when you're going to go on a long trip with your car, you, of course, make sure the gas tank is full, and you might check the oil, and you might check the radiator, especially if you're in a hot climate, to make sure there's enough water in the radiator. But you also used to have to pop the caps and check the battery to make sure there's enough water in the battery. Our batteries today don't need that, but the ones in the past did. And if you don't have enough juice, enough liquid, you can't carry a current. You can't get your it's like your get up and go is got up and gone, right? And so getting hydrated is the first step. And I fully agree, detoxing is the place to start, and healing leaky gut before you try to pull out these heavy metals. Dr. Joe Pizzorno wrote an excellent book last year called The Toxin Solution. And he gives you a step-by-step approach of when you're going to detox, what are the basics you have to do first? And Dr. Rob, you're right on the money. It's get those detox pathways working and heal the gut first. So thank you for that.
Delighted.
And let's see, I'm looking, what healing treatments do you recommend for sciatic nerve pain? Well, that's interesting. You have to identify where the sciatic nerve pain is coming from. And there's a number of places it can come from. A common one that's missed is that there's a muscle in your butt, part of the butt muscles called the piriformis muscle. And in about 30% of the population, the sciatic nerve goes right through that muscle. And in the rest of us, it goes underneath it. But if you're one of those 30% where the nerve goes right through the muscle, because I'm assuming you've tried other things if you're asking that question here. And if you're one of the 30%, then the standard protocols don't work at all if you've got tight piriformis. So the way you can check that out is that you kneel down on one knee and you put your front foot, where the foot's on the ground, just reach it out more in front of you. You might even hold on to a chair here, put a chair next to you and hold on to the seat of the chair and reach out with that front foot more, and your back knee's on the ground. And then just lean forward over the front knee with your hip from the back knee, not turning sideways, but staying forward. You lean forward like this on that front knee, and you're stretching that piriformis. And if you have a sciatic nerve that's going through the piriformis, you're going to feel it right away. You say, oh no, I'm not doing that again. Well, good. Now you know, and then try the other side. That's a really common missed trigger to constant or chronic sciatic pain, is a tight or spastic piriformis. And if you have that, you just have to get some massage in there and then learn some stretching for it. But that's a really common one. Dr. Rob, would you add anything else to that one?
Well, I always have folks think about red flags. If they've got weakness or numbness or bowel or bladder incontinence, that's another critter. That's a conventional workup, an MRI to see if there's not enough room in the spinal canal, or the nerve root openings are pinched. And then short of that, I guess my main two reminders to folks are that often to get from symptomatic back to asymptomatic, you might have to only get a millimeter back of room for a structure or inflammation to go away or better alignment. And so working with a good physical therapist or chiropractor, body worker, yoga or Pilates, core strength, getting back onto anti-inflammatory principles that are going to get those tissues to shrink a little. Again, these things tend to be a little more within reach than they appear sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're assuming that the person has had the MRIs and they can't find anything wrong. If you're asking where is it coming from, I'm assuming that they've had MRI. And if you haven't had an MRI, of course you need to have the standard test done to confirm that there's not a disc herniation, or if that canal that the nerve goes through has got a bunch of calcium in it, that could easily be the trigger. Jill has a question. My stomach really hurts from drinking, even a little water. So I end up drinking only about 2 to 3 cups per day. As the day goes on, it gets worse. Well, the first thing I think of there, Jill, is what's wrong with your stomach? It's not the water, obviously it's the stomach. And so we have to explore what's out of balance there. And I've had people who are allergic to water before. That's not uncommon. That's a real electrolyte imbalance and a toxic solution that we have to detox them. But the first thing I would check is to see if you have a bacterial infection in your stomach and making that stomach be all full of carpet burns. If you're wearing a pair of shorts and you slide on the carpet and you burn your knee, you get that carpet burn kind of thing. It can be just mild and an irritation, or it can be so bad you can't put a pair of pants on, right? So carpet burns inside the stomach can come from a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori, or H. pylori. Really common. Studies suggest 50 to 90% of the world's population have Helicobacter infections. So we have to find out why your stomach is acting. It's not the water, or it may be toxic water, but I assume this happens with any water you drink. We have to find out what's going on in your stomach. It's a great story. There were these 2 guys back in 1986 that wrote a paper, and they said, we think that sometimes ulcers are caused by a bacterial infection. This was 1986. And they were gastroenterologists, and everybody laughed at them. All the gastroenterologists said, that guy is a weirdo. Of course we know that ulcers are caused by too much acid in the stomach, and you have to give antacids. And these guys were ostracized, but they didn't care. What'd they do? Well, they put a tube down one of their stomachs, down their throat into the stomach, and took pictures of the healthy pink tissue of their stomach. Then he drank a beaker of the bacteria Helicobacter pylori. He waited about 5 days until he was feeling really sick. then did another endoscopy and took pictures of all the ulcers in his stomach. Then they took the antibiotics to kill the bacteria. Waited about 5 to 10 days, I think, until the stomach was healing, the pain was gone. Then they did a third endoscopy to show the healing of the ulcers in the stomach. Then they published it. And then with the pictures, and then everybody knew they were a nutcase, right? But they proved that sometimes ulcers are caused by a bacterial infection. And the World Health Organization thought that was so important, they sent that paper to every medical society in the world saying, send this out to all of your doctors. Why? Because at the time, the #1 cancer in the world, 1986, killing people, was stomach cancer. And stomach cancer is often caused by a Helicobacter infection that was never diagnosed. And the World Health Organization hoped that when patients came in with indigestion and heartburn and stomach problems, that the doctors would check them for this simple bacterial infection that's not too difficult to get rid of and take care of it, and that it would reduce the incidence of stomach cancers. Turned out that's exactly what happened. 10 years later, stomach cancer went down within that 10-year period dramatically around the world because of that. And these two guys were still considered nutcases by the gastroenterologists, you know, because it's a small world, good old boy world. They didn't care. 21 years later, they win the Nobel Prize in medicine. Barry Marshall and his partner, whose name I don't remember. And the Nobel Committee said to these two doctors who, and this is the exact quote, who with tenacity and a prepared mind challenged prevailing dogma. And that's what we all need, is tenacity, meaning stick to it. Doesn't matter what they think, stick to it if you think this might help you, like emotional stability and quiet time and finding some peace. What if you were to find peace for 5 minutes a day? Just 5 minutes a day. What if you were to find peace for 5 minutes a day? That's tenacity that you keep working on, and a prepared mind. Well, by watching this event that Dr. Rob has worked so hard on with these experts talking about this, that's preparing your mind. That's getting cutting edge information. And then to challenge prevailing dogma, to challenge the way that we think about how we're supposed to be living life. I love the Barry Marshall example. He didn't care. He just drank a beaker of that stuff and got really sick because he knew that he could cure it, right? But he needed to prove to these bozos that they were right, right? So, and you don't have to go to that extreme, you know, to find 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, let alone 2 hours a day to find peace. Dr. Rob, anything you want to add to that one?
That's a pretty darn good summary. That person's stomach sounds angry to me, and so I definitely think about inflammation of the stomach called gastritis, and I think that H. pylori, folks should know, can be found via an antibody marker in the blood or looking in the stomach. Really high value to find it. And I always like people to know that a way to kind of know if there's stomach inflammation, which I share your strong suspicion for, that's there. These some of the most beautiful botanicals ever are the demulcents. So slippery elm, deglycerinated licorice, marshmallow, the plant, aloe. They just do such wonderful things for our stomach, both diagnostically and therapeutically, and they're amongst the safest things out there. So trying some of those things might be both soothing and diagnostic. If little slippery elm or marshmallow settle things down quickly, that would really suggest to me there's some inflammation that needs to be figured out and resolved.
Agreed. Alice writes, Christmas cookies, pie, and other sweet baked treats always made me ill. I figured out, finally, in advanced middle age, that the inflammation from gluten made me unable to handle sugar, chocolate, casein, eggs, nuts, and vegetable shortening too. But now that I have perfected low sugar, gluten-free baking, I get to enjoy my own treats in moderation, of course. Way to go, Alice. High five to you, girl. Way to go.
Yeah, right on.
That's really great. And that's, that's persistence. That's tenacity. Just keep working at it. And now you enjoy the fruits of the labor. Way to go. Way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go.
She summarized it.
Very well. Yes. Let's see if we have another question here. Are you drinking tap? If so, drinking distilled water, the chemicals in tap and bottled water may be affecting your, I have to scroll down, your gut. Oh, that's a question for that woman. That's a really good question also about tap water. You're right. Depending on where you live, and it may be contaminated. It's certainly in the cities, municipal tap water has a lot of chemicals in it that aren't great for you, and wells out in the country can be contaminated also. So that's a good suggestion to test your water supply and see what you might be drinking there. Luann says, problem with dry eyes. What vitamins could I be lacking besides vitamin A?
Omega-3 fatty acid, fish oil, or fish, or if you're vegan or vegetarian, want to go plant-based, there's ways to get it, but DHA and EPA or their precursors usually are the highest yield, and the hydration.
Agreed. But where you live, I mean, I'd be eating salmon and having salmon eggs and on a regular basis,
Yeah, go ahead and get it from the food. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. Especially, my gosh, Alaska. But the very best fish comes from your area, and it's
we're so lucky. Yeah, trapped in paradise.
Yes. We both are trapped in different paradises. We just make paradise out of where you are. That's really a goal. Well, Dr. Rob, it's been an honor to have you on the show here tonight. And everyone, the link is there. Please register for the event. It's difficult sometimes to watch all of them, but you watch one or two and you say, wow, this is really great. Then perhaps you'll purchase it so that you've got lifetime access. But it's free to watch on the days that it's aired. So click on it, register, and then look at the speakers and decide if one of them really calls to you to watch. And then hopefully it will move you a little further down your path to finding your own peace in life. Dr. Rob, thanks so very much for being with us.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. True privilege.
Amen to that. All right, everyone. See you next